We are in for a really special treat today. I can't talk and click buttons at the same time, just so you know, so I'm letting people in. Um, but we are in for a really special treat, and I am just beyond delighted and honored to get to be part of a conversation with Ashara today. And Ashara is someone who, gosh, I don't know, I've been on your fan list for a while. I first got introduced to you when you were leading the charge on the Hub Oakland, and really playing such an extraordinary leadership role in that organization of being a place for people to come together and do their work, but also come together in community, kind of a place to host spaces for the arts. And it's like it was a hub of the heart and a hub of so many different things, and so much magic happened there. And I know that it was also just it was an extraordinary undertaking. And so I really know Ashara as just showing up as a leader on so many different levels. And also today we get to meet her, I think, in her heart space, and where she is like really now how I now know you. I was introduced to you through the hub, but really I now know you as just an extraordinary artist, and not only just an artist committed to her own work, but an artist who's also committed to rising and bring awareness to other artists as well. And it's a real distinction that I just want to make note of, because there's so many different ways we can play. I'm going to read you her official bio. Um, Ashara is a Black feminist and interdisciplinary creative artist leader committed to an intersection of framework of social transformation that expands the influence and impact of arts and culture on racial equity, gender and justice, and environmental literacy. Working internationally across cultural, spiritual, civic, and social innovation spaces. I want to say that again because it's like, wow. Working internationally against cultural, spiritual, civic, and social innovation spaces, she embodies a range of roles including independent curator, cultural theologian, artist, creative industries entrepreneur, organizer, mentor, and mother. Ashara is the founder of Artists as First Responder, an organization and interactive arts platform supporting BIPOC artists whose creative practices heal communities and save lives. Additionally, she is a forum curator at the Museum of African Diaspora, and also serves as cultural strategist for Chef Bryant Terry's Four Color Books, an imprint of 10 Speed Books. One of the things that I love about Ashara is that she says it like it is. So just, like, come with your bold questions and you'll receive bold answers is what I feel like. I don't normally make promises, but I feel like that is a strong promise I can stand beside today. And we're going to do something a little bit differently, where it's going to be more of a Q&A, and we'll be here for about an hour today. And so we have a couple of things that I know that we wanted to talk about. And then as questions emerge, feel free to raise your hand or place them in the chat box, and we will go from there. Um, so I actually wanted to start with this conversation that we had, which was sort of this little, I don't know, like I don't want to call it a secret, Ashara, but it was we were chatting last week about our experience with COVID, and sort of like there's this unspoken piece that's not going out in the media that we both had this common experience about, that feels worth weaving into the part of the story of our time. So I don't know if you want to start off. Right, let's start off with the unspoken.
I want to start off by speaking gratitude for the invitation to sit with you all today for a spell, as we say. Yes, thank you. To sit with you for a spell and to see you glowing, on the land. I am visiting. I'm a visitor here today on Ramaytush and Ransom Maloney land in a place called San Francisco, California. It's where I am today. I live between here, the Bay Area, and my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. But I'm here in California right now. So, the spoken is that I want to invite us to take a breath together and to just land our booties, you know, where they feel comfortable, and then make an adjustment for that. Uh, I want to offer the unspoken by um, just playing a few tones here on my crystal bell. This is the key of E, which is about the solar plexus chakra, the second chakra, the space of manifestation, Also, the space that tells you the truth, right? The body never lies, ever tells you the truth. And I want to speak into what has appeared to be a silence around our newly dead, to honor our ancestors and bring them into the circle with us, into the spell of this time together today. Leah, thank you for this beautiful work, this healing work that you offer to us, to the community, and to those of us who are seeking, who are looking, and who are attempting, freedom in our lives. And yes, and what that's looked like, right, over the last 2 years with this particular pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, and what that's felt like. We were talking a bit ago about what it felt like to actually, for me in my body, to actually have to navigate the virus in my body. After doing so much to like not contract it, after being, so good and so careful, and somehow still, so there was this kind of sadness and anger that I had uh, showing up. I was like not expecting it to show up. And so I was like kind of angry at myself for somehow getting sick. And I was watching, and this was during the Omicron kind of like surge at the end of 2021, where so many people were just laid out. But all of the social media posts, all of the, public conversation around it, at least in my feeds, was like, oh, I have COVID, but I just have the sniffles and it's really mild and everything is fine. I have a pot of soup. And my partner and I were like, we're really sick. We're really sick. Like I had a fever for days and days and days, and my whole body hurts. So I can't do anything. And what maybe, okay. So there was, and that wasn't being talked about. And I said, I know it can't be that everybody that I know, because really almost everyone I knew had COVID, is having a mild representation of it. That can't be true, right? And so, you start to think about what the conversation is on social media, which is a curated conversation. I'm someone who lives and works as a curator. And so I'm like, okay. So it was okay to talk about having finally, for some people and other people who had it more than once, but finally have contracted COVID, but it being okay, you don't have to worry about me. But those of us who were sick, as I was calling people, and they were like, no, I'm really sick and I needed to go to the emergency room. That they weren't the ones writing on social media. And these are people who are very much social media people. So, we just kind of got into this conversation around anger and guilt around it, but also just the twisted narrative that says it's only okay to talk about contracting COVID if you're not really sick. You know, only if you feel a little bit yucky. And so I just had a lot of time to contemplate and meditate and pray about that, and really like be with my body, who was giving me a lot of information, but also be with kind of the psyche uh, of the warped sense of identity that happens through these technological rooms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that to me that was part of the piece that's getting missed around this greater conversation of like, whatever your story is around COVID, and there's so many stories about it. There is one common experience that I feel like we're all having somewhere, and actually that's a complete lie because we're not having this complete common experience. But there is an experience that's out there, which is this pause. Not everybody got to pause, so it's important for me to honor that. A lot of people were forced to, but there were plenty of people that never got to, and there were many people that went into hyperdrive. So it's like there's that even that isn't, but in terms of a greater narrative, in terms of what did happen was that there was a great slowing down. And I know in myself when that happened, yeah, the stories around shame, all the different stories that circled around it, right? How could I have gotten it? I tried so right, blah, 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 blah. And but behind that, once I was actually in it, was a sense of rest that I hadn't had in years.
Yeah, talk about that. That was real.
That was real. And then there was a sense of space to listen, and there was like, because my fever was so intense that I actually like started hallucinating. And like I actually started to have like almost like this journey. And so there's a part of me where I'm like, I just want to watch TV and like and take myself out of this experience and like be distracted. And then there was this other part of me where I'm like, are you kidding? This is like this is the thing. Like this is when all of a sudden you're between the layers and I can hear, and I can hear in a way that I can't hear when I'm in that constant static going. And so it actually catapulted me into this like 10 days because I was exhausted and completely depleted, and all my outward energy, there was nothing going out. It was all in. And so it put me in this deep place of receiving that I hadn't been in years. And so that feel like that space of listening, um, that was invited in, I felt like that was something that we haven't gotten, and what that does for us as artists and creatives.
Mhm. Yes, yes, yes. That witnessing of yourself, that turn in, that was real. And I felt renewed afterwards. I mean, literally 12 days, 11, 12 days of sleeping for 18 hours a day and eating a very limited kind of diet of things, and not giving out to anyone except myself, other than my partner, who, sometimes I could make soup for them or something like that. But it was really like my entire work is an outward offering. So to like be in a place of total receiving and in a space of metta as well for myself is like, and so may I be happy, may I be well, may I be healed, may I be at ease and feel safe. And it just felt like being in this most amazing womb space again. you know I mean, it sucked that my body hurt, but the awareness, what my practice, what my meditation practice has taught me over these 4 decades is that, the body is actually going to tell you everything you need to know. So I had some time to really get very serious with myself about how I treat the body, how I treat her when I'm not paying attention, as deeply as I was during COVID. So yeah, there are these gifts of that. And I lived also in a space where my work kind of went into hyperdrive, but I also have the privilege of being able to work from a laptop and Wi-Fi. So I didn't have to actually go outside to continue to work. I just was working a lot, a really kind of insane amount of clients that I took on, because in the midst, as you all know, in the midst of the I don't know, onset and height of the COVID pandemic, there was also racial reckoning and uprising all over the planet, um, to like reassess what white supremacy and racialized capitalism has done and what it looks like in society, and what it looks like for us to pay attention to Black people being killed, um, online, and what it meant for people to step into the street. And it pulled people out of shelter in place. It pulled me out into the street, absolutely. There was no way I could stay home and not to be in the street and raise my voice as an organizer, as a healer, as an artist. There is no way. And what, again, it just brings back to the forefront for me that artists are the first responders as well. It's like the artist showed up first, the poet showed up first, the choreographer, the people who organize, the people who make the sign, who designed it. It's like there is no revolution, there is no activism, there is no organizing on the planet that does not start with your creative self. You might not call yourself an artist, but it is your divine creative self that shows up. The artist shows up to say, not on my watch.
You know, I had a dear friend over the other night, and we were just talking about just that this wobbliness that's happening right now, and the fear, and like the whoa, we can't believe what's happening, you know, with Ukraine and Russia, and she came and she just lit up. She was like, "This is the time of artists," and she was like, you know, she was in this like just like there's this enlivened exalted expression of her where it's like right, it's like something else comes online when you have these extreme moments that kind of like shake you out of whatever it is, and there's another part, and what she was speaking to is right when we come to these edges, now more than ever do we need the artists to both like speak truth to power, because it's like we can say things outside of information, we can say things with art, we can say things with beauty, we can say things, we can be the mirror. You've really, I'm really fascinated to hear you talk about this piece around trauma versus joy informed media, because it's so up right now in terms of so much of our media is trauma informed and continues to just like to there's not much of it's like we're not really separated anymore. Like if you're watching, you know, it's like what's happening in Ukraine is now happening in your own living room. You know, what was happening on the streets with Black Lives Matter is now happening in your living room. And if you're willing to watch, there's a lot happening. And it's like, and we don't know, like they say, like the mind is, you know, we have capacity to have mastery of the mind, but our brain is you know can't is easily tricked into thinking that we're having that physical experience right now. So I'd love to hear you talk more about this trauma versus joy informed media.
Mm. Well, I want to honor the fact that I see Ray has their hand up, and if there's a question or something that you'd like to, or something you wanted to say, just before I, kind of respond to what you're saying.
Well, it maybe ties in a little bit. I'm interested in hearing more about silence, about the fact that certain voices, um, certain voices were willing to speak and certain voices weren't, and it seems like that's a much larger issue in our world. And I don't know how, as an artist, you um, are processing the idea that people are silent for one reason or another. Silence struck me as an important concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. You know, hmm, there is a silent world, right? And there is a non-silent, it's interesting, non-silent, silent, non-silent, communication that is always happening, that we are always in conversation with the ethereal body and, the energies and spirits and what um, some folks might call angel or Orisha around us. Those conversations are always happening. Some people think about it as like the little voice that spoke to me. It's not a silent voice, it's just for you. It's a conversation you're having with your own self, your mind. And then for some people, it's a conversation of other voices that they're hearing, folks who have like other kind of special gifts and can hear the voices of other people and other spirits as well, or even channel them, which is kind of dope. It's like, who's talking and what are they saying? So in terms of how it showed up, I think for COVID, I think it had to do with, honestly, the guilt trip that we put on people who did not get vaccinated. I mean, it has everything to do with that. People get shots for various reasons. They choose to, they choose not to. But the media conversation became shame on you if you don't get a shot. And if you don't get a shot, you're going to get sick. And then we're going to, on another layer, have all of the nurses and doctors and medical practitioners speak about everybody who's sick, everybody who's dying is unvaccinated. That was the layer. And so it touches into this trauma-informed media, but really it's about a whole trauma-informed pedagogy, a whole trauma-informed ethos, a whole trauma-informed way of believing that this country, this culture, I'm going to be very specific about the United States because I was born here, I live here, and how media plays a role in keeping us scared and afraid all the time. That's, so that has all things to do with a lack mentality, a scarcity mentality, and an individualistic mentality that says, I'm in charge of me, and I'm not, what I do has nothing to do with what anyone else does, and what decisions I make have nothing to do with what happens to anyone else. Like, this is about me. And so, these are just not carryovers. These are the manifestations of white supremacy, patriarchy, and racialized capitalism. How does that show up in our media? It is about trauma and keeping us traumatized over and over and over. And so my art practice is primarily a curatorial practice, which means I don't actually know how to do all of the things that I love to explore and highlight. But I do have a gift of being able to listen to people and take note of what they're doing, what they're interested in, what they're dreaming about, because people like to tell me what they're doing and what they're dreaming about, whether I ask or not. And so I take note. And sometimes I meet other people who are doing something that I think, you might want to talk to this person. You might want to talk to this person. We might want to have a conversation together. Maybe we should have tea or go take a walk, whatever it is. A trauma-informed pedagogy, which shows up in media and all institutions in the United States. So it shows up in transportation and education and the criminal justice system, which is an interesting oxymoron, I believe. It shows up in all institutions, and all institutions in the United States are rooted and based in white supremacy and racialized capitalism, all institutions. And so when you start to think about, we talk about racist institutions or institutionalized racism, we have to step back a few steps and go, people run institutions. People maintain and perpetuate the ideas of those institutions, right? And so the unspoken, the silent part is that there has been a privilege allotted to a vast population in the United States that has not had to say, you know what, the truth is that there are people whose lives do not matter as much as my life does. And I truly believe that. And I believe that I am, the keeper of all things that have to do with what success I might have, even. So that this place of apocalypse, this place of reveal that we're inside of right now, this place of manifestation right now, is allowing us to speak into the silent places if we choose to do the work. It is a very difficult space to sit in. And it's difficult, I think, for the people who are willing to speak, and it's difficult for the people who have been afraid to speak. And I just want to say, Ray, for me, it's like the people who, in that particular instance around COVID, who said, I'm not going to speak about it, has everything to do with fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being shamed, fear of not appearing strong. Like, maybe my immune system is different than your immune system, and therefore I was able to navigate whatever variant of Omicron or Delta or whatever, because everyone was describing their Omicron experience as a mild one, and we weren't having a mild one. We just took a guess that perhaps we have the Delta variant, and we were in Detroit at the time, and there were no tests available in the store, and you couldn't, and the hospitals didn't have any tests. And if you wanted to get a rapid test, you had to wait about 6 hours to do that. And so anyway, I just wanted to try to kind of wrap in the conversation around both the silent
Well,
aspects, yeah, and where, and what this might sound like and look like for us as a trauma-informed pedagogy, and the shift that I'm committed to, which is about joy-informed pedagogies.
so Denalee, I see your hand will come up in just a moment. Um, I so trust in the emergent creative process. Why this piece around COVID, Omicron, silence, using your voice. How do we use it? When do we use it? And when do we silence the impulse to speak? And this role of artist as first responder. And I'm thinking of, so many of the poets who've said things, or I was just listening to Bob Marley's lyrics the other day. I was actually reading them. You listen to Bob Marley, you dance, you jam out, then you read his lyrics and you're like, oh my God, this man was like just laying it all out and was not mincing words, and yet delivering it in a way that we could dance to, that would bring us together.
Yeah.
And I'm so enamored by that, the expanded universe that artists can create, where it can like cut with a knife through the illusions while also creating the space that can bring us together. And I'm curious, I so love this phrase that you're using of artists as first responders, because I felt that impulse too. For me, like when that March of 2020, I was like, fear. We got fear going on. I'm gonna give people a way to get into their fear, and nobody wanted to touch that. It was like, no, we don't want to touch fear, because people weren't ready. But I feel like, or a lot of people weren't ready, and it's like, and I feel like as artists, we are kind of at the forefront of seeing those pieces. Um, I'm so curious about what it means for you to be an artist as first responder, and what your experience has been in these last couple of years doing such.
I would consider myself a practitioner, someone who is practicing. Um, and I don't have a separation between my spiritual practice and my artist practice, or my practice as, I practice as a parent and a grandparent as well. Um, and those spaces are jagged, the edges are jagged, it's a rough terrain. I would say, hmm, for instance, one of the things that I've learned over these last 2 years, how to smile with my eyes more, because my face is covered so much. How to attune my listening, because both of my ears, can hear this kind of sound, verbal sound. Some people hear sound differently, but because I can hear this kind of sound, and I've learned to stand away from people, I've had to attune my ears differently to hear people. I don't ask people to speak up. I just have tried to learn how to listen more deeply to what people are saying. Um, hmm. I have found myself in a space where I've been asked to coach people um, professionally, which is really not my jam, you know. But because I am someone who is willing to speak, I am someone who's willing to ask questions. It used to drive my mother crazy. My curiosity is absolutely my driving energy. It's always, what is that? What is that? What does that mean? Who is that? Because I want to know. I sincerely want to know. I have found myself in a space where I am more willing to speak. And I prefer small groups versus large groups. I've had enough time with large groups speaking, so I prefer groups like this, actually. And I have found myself creating circles and portals for people to be with their grief and their sadness, and have started speaking about it as long grief syndrome. What does it mean to already have been in a state of grief and then have a pandemic lay on top of it that activated, rage and guilt and fear, and then more grief because of the amount of death And so creating artistic spaces for and partnering with other healers and other practitioners who we're not turning away from the grief. We're not. It's like, we have to deal with this. The fact that we haven't dealt with this is set up so much dis-ease, so much angst, so much hurt and harm in our society, and how people treat each other, think about each other, don't even humanize each other. We have to deal with this grief. We cannot pretend like it's not there. We can't be numb and say, I don't want to feel anything. Because when you get numb, you don't get to feel the joy either. You're just numb. But dealing with this grief, and particularly because my practice is very focused on Black women and femmes, the circles have been mostly for Black women and femmes. You know, because we have the counter narrative in the United States that says Black women are strong, Black women don't feel pain in the same way, Black women will get it done. You know, so that's part of the narrative, the public narrative. And it also means that, and maybe we wear it well and, you know, look beautiful doing it or look powerful doing it. It doesn't mean it's not heavy. And it means that we have to create spaces for us to heal ourselves first and each other. And so that kind of practice work, that kind of healing circle spell cast work is really the work that has been sustaining me as well for the last 2 years, just not walking away from the grief. I noted someone had their hand up. Who was that?
Denalia.
Denalia.
I'm happy to, we've moved on. My offering was relevant to the previous topic. If there's going to be a few minutes at the end, I'm happy to share that. Is there going to be some comment or some time for that at the end?
We'll do what we do at the last 10 minutes, where we share in terms of what we received.
So maybe I'll just say something here. It's just pertaining to the silent. I'm in a family of medical first responders, and I made a choice very early in our in-person engagements to not have the conversation around COVID. Like, I just didn't engage it at all, and in my own heart, needed to prioritize that the harmony in our relationship. I made that the priority. What was interesting was that it came around in a boomerang when I was back in my own community, because I didn't speak and I was out and still doing ceremony, etc. I had 2 sets of Indigenous elders that I realized eventually that they thought I was, even though I hadn't said that I was vaccinated. So in the end, choosing silence on my part created a misunderstanding, and another value of transparency for me and honesty meant that I had to raise the question, and it ended up causing a big ruckus in relationship. So it's navigating this place has been extremely challenging, and something that shifts from moment to moment. So I just wanted to honor that it wasn't fear that kept me silent, but a choice to prioritize the harmony in a relationship, because there was no way we could have a discussion without, one person wanted to impose their viewpoint on another. But still choosing the higher priority ended up in a greater priority, a polarity in another situation. So
Thank you. I can really relate to that. My partner and I differ around vaccinations. And I have 2 sons, 2 adult sons. One of whom is a staunch vegan, and healer, educator, and the other who is an artist in a particular kind of way around design and fashion and looking at mental health. And both of them, for very different reasons, decided to not be vaccinated. And the choices that both of those artists had, and the things that they have had access to, and then also been denied access to because of those choices that they made. And it's all very interesting. The choosing the harmony in the relationship. I'm with you on that. Yeah, thank you for that. Can we talk about joy, Leah?
Let's.
I want to say that it starts with I don't want to say it's an understanding. It's really a knowing that we are interconnected, that we are interdependent, not just the humans, but all the beings on this beautiful blue water planet, right? And when you get the perspective of that knowing, you can't help but know that there is abundance, right? That there is, not only is there enough, but you actually get to give from the overflow of your cup. And those of us who like water work all the way down to the bottom of the cup, and then we're scraping the bottom of the cup and there's nothing left. I've lived that life as well. And I'm not saying that my cup doesn't get emptied out sometimes, but the knowing is that there is enough. And so because there is enough, I can be happy about this. And being in a space of joy for me is being in a space of, I get to be generous with myself and with others. I get to have boundaries around what it means to put the mask on myself before assisting others, that mantra that we hear when we get on an airplane. That I try to remind myself and my friends and my family. It's like, and how that gets, how to toggle that reality with the expectations of community, right? So when you sit in a space of joy and abundance, the conversation isn't about, oh, this person is going to, they're going to get some gift that I believe should be for me. It's, this person is going to get some gift. How can I help amplify or expand that gift in a way in which they are supported, and then we are able to like move forward together because they feel supported, right? So if you have enough to eat, then we are not going to have a problem around you coming over and like stealing things out of my garden. How about we garden together? And then we get to share, and you plant some things and I plant some things, and then we have a more diverse meal. Just as a simple metaphor for abundance. What does it mean for us to be creative people? Let's try the arts sector, which is a hierarchical, elitist sector that sets artists up to compete for funding, for collectors, for recognition, for awards, for residencies, that we are competing with each other, right? And in a world of abundance, we share those resources with each other. And so if I get an artist residency, I invite my friends to come and learn with me or create with me. If I'm asked about who inspires me, if I'm asked about my work, and there's an opportunity for me to talk about my mentors or other artists, a poet whose work is special to me, or the fact that at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a DJ on Instagram who DJ'd for 9 hours, 3 days in a row, like DJ, D Nice. I had never actually heard of him until until the pandemic, and then I went and found out about, a little bit more about his career. but the gift that was, the being able to just turn on my phone and plug it into the speaker and dance for 9 hours. That an artist did that. An artist amassed, curated a playlist of other artists' musical works and played them for us for 9, 10, 12, 13 hours. Like literally, he would put on a song, get a glass of wine, go pee, and come back like for days in a row. Because the music is the healer, right? Because the culture is the cure, right? Because the art is going to heal us in addition to sleep, rest, dream space, food, clean water, clean air, being able to put our feet on the grass or the soil, going to the ocean, playing with children, listening to them laugh. All of these are joy-informed pedagogies and ways in which we can be generous and gift each other and ourselves.
Ashara, I really appreciate this piece about what you're speaking to about um, artists' role in this generative way of being in life. And I got to interview Larry Harvey, who was one of the founders of Burning Man a few years ago. And I wanted to understand the gift culture because I was like, where'd the gift culture come from? And he told me this story. He's like, it was from the artists in San Francisco. Like there was a culture where we'd get together and we would all give each other our gifts, and people would be singing and they would be dancing and they would be doing their thing, and like it's in the nature of artists to give. It's like you have a gift, you give it. It's like it's just in that nature. And then he told the story about how it ended up coming into Burning Man, where it was just a bunch of friends. And then one year, some guy came out with a bunch of what do they do on Fourth of July? Those things that they put up in the air.
Fireworks.
Fireworks, right. And some guy came and he wanted to sell them fireworks. And they were all like, why would we buy anything? We're all giving each other things. And then the guy donated them. And then they started making these rules about how there was no selling. But I was just really struck by what he was speaking to, which is that there is this, it's like, I feel like it's that when we're in our relationship with our art, it is that moment when we're in relationship with our spirit. So I really appreciated you speaking to that. There's no separation for you in those moments, and that there's this, and I feel like it's also the place like that universal element of giving and receiving is so broken, you know. And it's weird because right there's all these artists that just have a gift to give, and yet we come against this the consumer wall,
Yeah.
which is also like a taking wall.
Yeah.
And then I also heard once that Americans actually have the hardest time receiving than any other culture. And I have to wonder about if it's because our consumerism is ultimately based on taking and extraction, and we're stuck in that energetic. So even though we feel like we're in exchange, because look, I gave you your money, so it's like I get, but it's like what's the mentality behind that? And it's not always, we don't always get to participate in that giving,
Mhm.
receiving loop. And I feel like listening to you, it's just bringing more and more to the surface artist's unique role in being able to bring us back into this, um, I don't know, original nature, if that's
Yes.
a
I love
fair.
that. Original nation. I mean, what you're speaking to this kind of like scarcity transaction, right? Like here's the money. I mean, here's also these opportunities that artists provide us wider imagination for defining what else is valuable. you know I've been to Burning Man a couple times, and you know the politics of it are very interesting. Their claim that it's not a political place is way, for me, and way off. It's absolutely a political place, because again, I believe that we are interdependent and need each other, and so you don't get to create a utopia without me. You're just there's no utopia on this planet without Black people. So Burning Man, come on, y'all. And for them to not be willing to have that kind of conversation, ain't no utopia without me. Come on. And I don't mean me personally, I just mean Black people, Blackness. Like ain't no freedom without me. So come on. And for you to like not want to discuss that and say it's not political, is a political act right there. But I want to invite, does everybody have use of their hand, their wrist? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna do an action, just the action is to like put your hand on your chest, and then kind of like in a quick motion go like this. So here's this transaction. My palm is open to give and to receive, to give and to receive, palm open, right? So it's like, this is I'm gimme, like when you're a kid and somebody's got candy or chips or something you want, you're like, yes. Like, gimme, right? Or like when you have like a treat or a little goodie or a marble and you want to share it with your friend, what do? You're giving it to them with as much joy, like, gimme that, let me give you that, and then I take it back, right? So I just want us to kind of remember that palm open to give and to receive, palm open, right? Or whatever body part. I'm just saying, if folks have, access to their hands, okay, fine. But it might be something else. Sometimes it's just your mouth, right? You just open your mouth to someone. The beauty and the joy of that. That is the most, not the most, but I don't know. It's a vulnerable thing to do. Let's just say that, to open your mouth to someone. So think about the joy that comes when you choose to open your mouth to a new lover. You open your mouth to them, you kiss them. Someone you want to kiss, you giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. So those are the thoughts around, and the feelings and the ideas I think that artists continue to offer us. Mouth open, palms open, hopefully mind open. I mean, this is how we get free, y'all. This is how we get free. It's not, this is mine and you can't have any, because if I give you half of it, then that's not enough. And like, well, actually, maybe half is enough. So what are our mindsets around what is enough? If you got a lack, poverty mentality, you think that half is not enough. You might only need 1. You don't need 5, but you have 10. Maybe 1 is enough. So racialized capitalism has us believing that only 10 will do. So what does that mean to decolonize our minds and our psyches around enough, around abundance, and around what will actually bring me joy? Do I have as much joy if I have 1 flower as 10? Probably. If I recognize the beauty in that 1 flower, or the world right here, which is this 1 cup of tea, this 1 cup of tea is the world to me. My ritual around making it for myself or someone gifting, it's the world, it's 1 cup. I don't need, the whole picture. I'm happy to have the 1 cup. That's enough. So here's this opportunity, I think, that continues to be how artists, how creatives invite us to reimagine, to dream differently, to dream more, even. Like, it's not this or that, it's all the things in between and then beyond, and then what's on the other side of the veil, and then yes, and what's on the other, the other dimension. So if you can attune your mind to be able to like see through the other dimensions, the other possibilities, those of us who have a fondness for Star Trek, I think, have an easier road because we've seen it, right? Because an artist like said, what about the alternative realities? What about paradox? What about time travel? What about, It's like, we do what we see. We do what we see. Artists help us see. And we're all artists. And that's just the gift of this. The challenge is that we separate the artist from everyone else. So they're the artist, I'm not the artist. Some of us think that we're actually not artists. And I know there's a quote or a question that a poet, Amiri Baraka, said. He was the poet laureate of Newark, New Jersey for a while. One of the founders of the Black Arts Movement, really prolific educator and teacher. He said, there were some people, I think it's really interesting that some people believe that politicians are more powerful than artists. Like there actually isn't any being any more powerful than an artist. Like I create, I define, I that's actually how this happens. Artists move the world, artists move the people, right? We elect the politicians, artists elect the politicians. And, right now, as we're watching the insanity of the conflict, the war happening in the Ukraine, and the mindset, the politics of Putin, one of the things that came through my Instagram feed the other day was all of these artists who had taken up arms. All of the artists who are like, yeah, I've never held a gun before. I've never used one. However, my role in society is to make it more beautiful than it was when I got here, or to disrupt, to agitate. And now I'm picking up a gun. And what that conversation was with these artists who were willing to stand and fight for the land that they live on. It's like, and maybe some of you might have seen that too, teachers and utility workers and babysitters, and not that there are a lot of male identified folks who are babysitters, but I'm just saying, so-called regular folks, non-military people who are willing to fight right now. Artists fight for us. They fight for us to remember our humanity. They fight for us to remember our interconnectedness, our beauty, our beauty. And when we can remember our beauty, we can live in joy. We can live in abundance. That is the nature of being beautiful, being generous. Carolyn, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you for such a rich conversation. It's something I've been curious about in the conversation around abundance, specifically with money. I've personally not experienced like being hungry or lack of shelter in my life, and I wonder how to speak to abundance to those who live in these realities of like where money unfortunately provides us these very basic needs, and how to bring that conversation of abundance into those spaces where people maybe don't have the finances for food or for shelter, and how do we speak to that with this perception of abundance. Thank you. If that makes sense. Yeah.
It does. And I guess I want to say, who is the conversation for? When we ask, how do we speak into that? Are we asking the folks who have those resources, to be in conversation together? Or are we like literally in an environment where we are supporting folks who don't have those resources? Like, who is the conversation for, I guess? And it's pretty hard as a human to be able to get into some kind of philosophical discussion with you if you're hungry. like literally if you're hungry or if your baby is hungry and you don't have the resources to feed them. Like it's just, timing is kind of everything, that timing is everything. It's like, so my question back to you is who's in conversation? So is it people who have resources and perhaps even have a lot of money having that kind of conversation, which is what I hope, by the way. I hope that people who have a lot of money are trying to, uh, I want to say, exercise their muscle around exploring what equity means and how that might show up in sharing and gifting and redefining, because if you have more, you can pay more. I'm not saying you should pay more, but if you have more, you can pay more. But if you have a mindset that says, I don't actually have enough, I still need those 10, you might think that giving away half is not good. It's too much. And so, I know we're coming up close to time, but that we can get into a whole conversation on another call around how philanthropy shows up and what the philanthropic industrial complex looks like and what it means to like make money off of the poor. I see you shaking your head over there. It's like, what does that mean? For wealthy people, maintain their money because poverty has to be maintained in order for the philanthropic sector to exist. That's a whole other conversation, but it is very much rooted in ideas of scarcity versus abundance. So that's my response to you, Carolyn. Is depends on who's talking. Yeah.
Ashara, I do want to recognize that we're at the end of our hour, and I just everyone, this is a slightly different class, and it is an hour shorter, and really we are in an abundance of getting to receive Ashara today because she's actually in the middle of an artist residency, and so we had to renegotiate our capacity to be able to get to be with her today, and also to respect that there's only a little bit of time left for her to be in a creative space. So really grateful that you were able to join us today and that we were able to find a way. And I mean, you just laid roots, and like you broke through so many different foundations, in terms of the depth of conversation that you offered. I kind of want to go down each rabbit hole. I think you opened like 5 different portals that we could go spend a couple of hours in. Um, but really grateful for the depth of conversation. And we do have a bit of a ritual, and we're going to do it efficiently today, in terms of if you just want to speak popcorn style into our collective about something that you're carrying away today, something that's really resonant, something that you're going to wonder a little bit more about, what came alive in our conversation today, and what wants to be anchored in. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just speak out the piece that you're claiming.
I think when you were talking about COVID and the kind of the word that comes up for me is shame. The shame about not having a certain measure of resilience or a certain measure of health, or later we get into a certain measure of I think abundance was the word, but really it's prosperity that people are sort of. And there's a kind of like there's a real judgment about not being where some people are and having some things. And I didn't get COVID, but when you were talking about COVID, I was really like hearing you say all of these things that I'm working on, just about like the shame around my own early childhood trauma and kind of what that means karmically and these other kinds of things. And that like, it's just kind of okay just to kind of be where you are. Like, even if all the people and everything aren't willing to support that or acknowledge that, it doesn't change that.
Thank you.
Take away the relationship between philanthropy and the maintenance of scarcity and the poor. Wow. It's just opened up a lot of doors. Thank you.
Grief and calm and grief.
artists as first responders and as that there's a power to that, power to being an artist.
Would you say artist is healer, culture is the cure?
I am an artist. I listen. I remember our humanity, and I remember our beauty. That activism is an act of divine creativity.
Giving and receiving.
Joy informed.
You say that again?
Joy informed.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for really bringing so much depth and richness. And as is our way, I guess we're doing a little bit of jazz hands. And as is our way to send Ashara off in just a really great way with a little bit of a Yahoo and a joy and a generosity and a song or whatever it is, we want to send you off in a great way. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Ashara.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful rest of the day wherever you are.
You
Blessings.
too.
Bye.
So much love.
Wait, one thing. One
Oh.
thing. There's one thing that you can do to really support and bring out Ashara's work even more into the world. She's got a Patreon, and I'm just going to put it into our link right here. We'll also send you more links to her work, but if you feel inspired and want to continue to follow her, that is one way that you can continue to stay engaged. There are other ways too, but that is a really great way. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Take good care. Farewell.